Your Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free, Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
We'd like to welcome you to Stress-Free Living. I'm Ray Samich and like to introduce everyone to my wonderful co-host for over 25 years, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you this fine day?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. I want to remind everybody, first and foremost, that there's a lot of different ways that you can enjoy this program. You can listen to it live here locally in the Cleveland, Ohio area at 1330 AM or 101.5 FM. You can catch it anywhere in the world on your internet stream, which means your mobile phone, your tablet, your computer, laptop, whatever you may have, your home speaker device, whichever. Just call it up on wintradio.com. And last but not least, you can catch us on YouTube. And I am remiss, I don't have the last couple of shows up there, but I'll get caught up. They'll all be there, and there's a lot there already. And you can catch the YouTube channel at Stress Free Living Radio, Stress Free Living Radio channel on YouTube. And if you do that, you not only can see us, but you can not only hear us, but you can see us. If you want to catch us live, we are Zooming almost every week. And there's a Zoom link that we make available to you at our Facebook page and on the website and on YouTube. And you can join us and talk with us in between the breaks as we are doing the shows live, mostly every Saturday morning. All right, Ratanjit, that takes care of the guidelines here for everybody. Now let's get serious because we've had a rough couple of shows, Ratanjit. We tackled for this new year education, and specifically the sins of education. And I don't know, in all of our years, I don't know if we have talked for pretty much 2 hours over two programs, part one and part two, and still not really come up with any solutions. We have certainly talked about the problem and in great detail explained why what we're doing doesn't work and the difficulties of education and presenting it and what our teachers are facing, what our administrators are facing, what our parents are facing, what the students are going through. We've talked all about that, but we did not come up with any type of solution. So I think we need to take a different approach, and I'm very grateful for your idea here this week of really talking about not the sins of education, but what is education and is it even necessary anymore? And I know that sounds crazy, but to give you a couple of quick examples, my grandchildren are going to school now. When I was in school, we weren't allowed to have a calculator in the classroom because they said that's cheating. You have to be able to calculate on paper and in your head. Today, they mandate that you have a calculator in the classroom. So, is education for something like math even necessary? Because you take a calculator with you to the store and everything tells you what it is. You don't have to figure out how much change I get back when I give someone $10 because it comes up on a machine. There's so many things that have almost eliminated education. Is it even necessary anymore? So that's maybe the first question we start with today. What do you think?
Well, see, as a human being, Ray, we are amongst all the other animals, animal, if I can call them, requires constant hand-holding guidance right from childhood. We teach them how to speak the language. We teach them what is their name, how this world works. We teach them relationships and so on. So education is all education. Some of that is informal education.
Right.
Then we put them into more concentrated effort in an organized way to teach them in school. And then they go further, they specialize, they go into college, they go into trade schools. So then what happens is ultimately all this purpose of education has basically become in our civilized society, making them viable employees so that they can find a job. So our entire education system has become a design for finding a paying employment. So it is necessary, education is necessary, but what we are doing is we are not providing adequate, proper education. So we are not able to convert a living human animal into a true human. So we end up performing at a mostly animal level. Now, people are going to come and call me all kinds of names, but that is where we are directed by insecurity, fear, greed, ego. All that is vested in the animal mode. So we have not become a true human. The purpose of education is to transform us into a true human.
But to my earlier point, though, as far as is education necessary, I am referring to school education. Okay, that's what I'm referring to when I say is education necessary. I agree. Our parents teach us, and we have all other kinds of influences for informal education, and that's going to happen. I mean, you would have to be in a box all by yourself not to have access to informal education. It's all around us. And to that point, I think everybody who has children today or who has grandchildren and sees what access they have to information/education, it has advanced so much over the last decade. I mean, I didn't even have Sesame Street or something like that when I was a kid. There was nothing like that at all. That came out in time for my children, and everybody raved about it. Wow, they're learning to count. They're learning all kinds of social skills. They're learning everything by watching this on TV. They were getting an education from a couple of those shows. Now there are channels dedicated to babies, dedicated to preschoolers, dedicated to elementary age kids that are just chock full of education. And so with that kind of resource that we have today, they can go on the internet and they can get any kind of videos teaching everything in the world at every level. I mean, they teach babies languages. You can learn foreign languages. They're teaching it to 4-year-olds. There's so much information/education out there. Have we actually made the classroom less important? Is it still viable in this era?
Well, see, as technology develops, as our methodologies changes, our mode of education or method of educating people is going to change. So there are more tools available today to give us that education. If one decides, we can educate ourselves. There is everything available. There are courses from great big universities available on internet. You can sit at home and attend those courses. You don't have to really go to the classroom and so on. But there are certain type of education which is going to require laboratories or practical education. So they have to be organized like a doctor. If you want to operate on a human being, how can you operate sitting at home? And similarly, so education is constant. One of the things which we have to make peace with it is education you don't finish your education. You only begin your education. You continuously stay in the mode of becoming a true student. And that is what our education has failed to do, convert us into a true student. So we are constantly searching for the truth, searching for the facts, searching for better information, because as science unveils new information, new facts, some of the older facts are becoming obsolete. So our education constantly is evolving. One of the things which we have to understand is change is constant, whereas somehow or other erroneously, we are told to settle down, to have a permanent home and get married and get children, and your life is all set. Whereas life constantly changes, Ray. And until you make peace with that change, and with change comes new learning, with change comes new tools. So education is constantly evolving. So if we can convert our human mind into a true student mind, then our society can be transformed.
So I like that a lot. I think everybody would. And people that continuously want to improve themselves. I do have a lot of friends and colleagues who continuously read books, and whenever they get together, they share the best books that they have found, that they have recently read, and that they really has helped them. There's a lot of people that are on internet with getting regular updates and different videos that come through that teach you all different kinds of things. Again, the point is that this is not really done in the classroom. I mean, if we're talking about a monumental change for the future generations, is the idea of going to school for 8 months, 9 months of the year and sitting in a classroom learning environment, is that still, do you think, an important part of our growth? Is the discipline that you potentially get in that environment forced learning? Is that maybe why we still need that?
Well, see, when you graduate from a particular school or college, there are certain characteristics you can see in that particular student, right? You can tell this is graduate from this college, this graduate from this. So what happens is ultimately knowledge has to be converted into habits. Look at doctors. So when you become a doctor, you have to form certain habits. Simple habit is after doing any surgery or anything, you have to go wash your hands. So they don't have to think about it. They have to go wash your hands, because major problem is infection. If you can do successful operation, if you are not in the clean environment, you will have infection. And as a result, in spite of successful operation, you can still die. And there is another thing which is very critical. our education system is at best, Ray, at very best, is incomplete. It's not giving us total education, complete education. In a smaller example, is if you don't educate a physician, a doctor into all aspects, how to operate, how to understand medicine, how to understand chemistry of the human body, all these are not taught. This is not a complete education. If we are only taught how to take care of certain things, you can at best become a nurse, but you cannot become a doctor. So again, to become a human, there is a higher degree of complete education, which we do not comprehend and we do not give. At the very best, our education institutions are giving us incomplete education at the very best. So until we have complete education, it is going to always undermine us as a human being. We are always going to be bickering, fighting, going to be parked in ego, fear, greed, until we have complete education.
So maybe the problem with the last couple of shows talking about the sins of education, and even my question so far today, maybe the problem has been that we've been thinking a lot about what happens in the classroom and the good things that happen there, and maybe the not so good things that are taught there, maybe the incomplete things that are taught there. But I think your point is that it's so much more than what is taught in the classroom. Maybe there's more that should be taught there too. To your point, that's incomplete. But we're talking about education of the entire human being in all aspects of life and with all sources of education in play. And maybe we've been restricting it to saying, you know, the old idea of getting on a bus in the morning and going to school for 8 hours and then getting a bus and coming back home, you know, or driving as you get older to college, whatever it is. That whole idea of that being enough to educate us for life is definitely inadequate.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So when we've been frustrated over the last couple of shows because we didn't know where to go with it, the place to go with it is that it has to be a complete education from all aspects.
Yes.
Okay. So I think that's a pretty good evolution here of the thought, because it's been frustrating to me, and I know to you, with people that have commented afterwards, that we've kind of like said, well, gee, where do we go? Because if we're just concentrating on what happens in the classroom, the answers are very limited. If we talk about how we can gather a full and complete education, then maybe there are a lot more opportunities to improve that.
Yes.
All right. So with that in mind, you have prepared something very interesting that we're going to show today. And of course, for our radio listeners, they won't be able to see it, but it will be here for our Zoom people and also on YouTube afterwards. But we're going to walk you through it. Even if you can't see it, we're going to give it to you step by step on a verbal basis as well. And I think I was able to see this in advance. I think it's really interesting. I think it's really a great way of clarifying what you're talking about in terms of a full education.
Yes.
Are you ready when we come back from the break to unravel that?
Absolutely.
All right. Anything you want to say before we do go to break, Ratanjit?
Yeah, let's go to break and then we'll go to that.
We'll have this ready to go. Okay. We are on Stress-Free Living today. Ray Samich, Ratanjit Sande, and we are tackling once and for all the education system and the education problem. No doubt about it. There is an education problem in our world and in our country, and there must be a solution to this. We are simply training and educating people through TV, radio, internet, classrooms, but what we are doing is just educating inadequate opportunities and unfulfilled lives. So let's talk about a complete education when we come back on this edition of Stress-Free Living. All right, we are at a break. Ratanjit, maybe you want to go ahead and initiate your share screen and we can open up, and still, if anybody would like to talk, please do feel free now.
So
I agree with that we are training, not educating.
Yeah.
So we should at least make clear what is the difference between training and education. And that part we can also take up along with other thing. And the education, I agree with Ratanjit that education does not stop at any time. It is always there.
All right, thank you very much.
We have expert of education, Dr. Bhatia. Madam, do you have any?
Not really. Yeah. I totally agree that, of course, this, the idea of education always, in fact, should be, training the head, the heart, and the hand, as they say. Unfortunately, I think we have only focused on the head and probably the hand. And I think most of what Ratanjit has tried to talk about, of course, is also the training of the heart. And I think once we get these three together, we would have truly educated, our learners, our students. And the other thing about, use of calculators, what Ray started this show with, I think it's all about trying to develop higher order thinking. So if a child knows the concept of addition or subtraction or multiplication, and if he uses a calculator to do that, that absolutely is I think is not a problem. The problem
I have to cut you off. We're going back. Okay. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Yes.
We are back on Stress-Free Living. Thank you so much for joining us here today. As always, having some delightful conversations with our Zoom guests, gathering from around the world, literally from India and Canada and across the United States. We're so grateful that they spend time with us on this live edition. And if you'd like to be a part of our Zoom conversation, we welcome that as well. Ratanjit, before we went to break, we talked about a elaborate layout here that you're going to show us, but a couple of our Zoom comments that came through just to share with our audience and with you to get kind of your input on it. One of them asked about if you would talk about the difference between education and training. Those two words probably, if you had a thesaurus, they're probably showing as the same, as a synonym. But what do you think? Is there a difference between those two words, and are we doing maybe too much training and not enough educating?
Well, see, you need to have both. And education is a reservoir through which comes out training. Training is more practical, how to do things, and both are necessary. And if we only focus on training and not educating, you don't develop your mind. Your mind has to be a thinker, a critical thinker. If you are not able to develop that mind, then you have no capacity to take criticism, no capacity to see something through others' point of view. You have no capacity to comprehend things which you have not imagined. So you have to expand your mind continuously.
And that leads into another one of our wonderful guests talking, kind of going back to what I said about the calculator not being allowed when I was a child, and now today it's mandatory. And of course, computers. I mean, all the students are using computers today. They all give them computers in most of the schools so that the kids take those home with them and do all their homework on their own computer. She talked about how these tools can actually give us a higher order of education, a higher opportunity to achieve more because we have these greater tools. What do you think about that? Is that, are we possibly overlooking the basics within using our mental skills, mental capacity, because we are relying on these technology tools? Or do you think that we can do both? Do you think that we can develop our brains and at the same time develop our higher order of brains by using the high technology?
There are different thoughts. One of the things which we don't realize is that human mind is not a small, it's not a limited reservoir. It actually expands. They have seen how the brain actually, when you do mathematics, then you do complicated things, complicated solving problem, allow the brain to get involved in this critical thinking, it expands. So initially, when we remember, when we do things in our mind, your mind's capacity is enhanced. So, but if we say, well, let's use our mind in a different area, more important than just calculating. So there is a mindset which says that no, we should allow this mind to develop. And it is not limited, because when we are able to calculate in our own mind very quickly, our thought process gets very enhanced. You don't need the calculator, because we have lived in that generation. So other side is that if, instead of doing some maths, all you need to do is understand the concept of how adding and subtraction and multiplication is done, then really use the calculator to do that. And that's fine. We can, when you have a restriction of time and situations. So both are viable situations. We are not going to go into those discussions in this topic. Let's understand the purpose of education and purpose why it is not working. And regardless whether we teach them through calculator or this, we are still giving them incomplete education. Until we give them a complete education and put them on the path of complete education. So what I'm saying is complete education is opening the storage capacity of the brain, not that after this understanding, you will be done with education. You will complete your education, but you will have understanding where all this complete education is coming from. So you will have a much higher capacity to accept information and accept and search and find the truth once you are exposed to the concept of this complete education.
Okay,
So,
I am ready. I loved your answers. I think what we just talked about was still very meaningful, but yeah, I'm anxious to get into what you have put together for us, prepared for us in terms of that complete education. Again, one of our Zoom callers says, it's not just about the head, and you talked about the head's incredible ability, the brain's incredible ability to learn so much, but it's also about educating our hands what to do and our heart. And maybe you're going to also add educating the real us in terms of what's important for us.
So, okay, are you going to share the screen?
You are going to share your screen, I believe, with us, for those of us that can watch the...
No, if you give me the share screen, then it works better.
Okay, I believe you have that ability. Yep, you have that ability right now to share that, Ratanjit.
Can you see it?
No, we can't. Okay. You're looking for that green button across the bottom, the share screen button?
Yeah, let me see. Hold on for a second.
Okay. We had this right in rehearsal. Okay, speaking of technology and education, uh-oh. There we go. Now it's working. Okay, and you just want to step that back to the beginning. Perfect. All right. So we're looking at a screen. Those of us that do have the visual capabilities, and it's starting for our radio friends with the words complete education.
So the complete education, I feel, very broadly can be divided into three categories. And the first is self-education, which is completely missing in most cases. If we touch that, we only touch that how our human body is, how our muscles and all our organs are, that we call as self-education. We don't go further than that. And then there is worldly education. So most of our education remotely focuses on worldly, which is also partially focuses on the worldly education. And the third is that our education system does not give us self-alignment education, because when you are driving a car, although it is all set, but as you drive 5-6 years, it has to be realigned. So our education system does not teach us how to realign ourselves back to the human being, because nature's law is, there's a law of entropy, means if you leave everything, it'll go back to its old stage. If you recover iron from the iron ore, and if you take the pure iron and put it back in nature, it'll become ore again. So it has to be protected. It has to be realigned. So now let's look at the self-education. The self-education consists of how are we designed? This human body is not designed by our parents, although we come through our parents, but everything is designed by nature, how nature has designed us. And then the second part is, what are we designed to do? If you don't understand this two parts, and then all that further begs a question of, although I'm told I'm Ratanjit, I'm a male, I belong to this country, I have this religion, I'm black or white or this, but nobody really tells me, who am I? The truth about us is very critical. So until these three things are fully comprehended, fully understood, we do not transform from an animal into a human being, right? So this part is completely missing from our education system. And this part is the first part of our education when we are young, when we are in kindergarten. And these need to be understood. And then these things should be constantly repeated. Again, if they are not reminded in high school, they are not reminded in college, they are not reminded at workplace, we will not be able to live these things. So
Ratanjit, if you don't mind me,
yeah.
Interrupting here on this. That first part that you just talked about, how are we designed? What are we designed to do? Who we really are? Those are the essence of the three questions that we've been talking about on this program for years.
Yes.
And our audience, faithful audience that is listening to us today and over these years, has come to know exactly what that means and who we really are through that. But my bigger question is that messaging hasn't gone out to the world at the level that it needs to. There's not enough people if we ask them who we really are, if we went on the street and just randomly talked to people in any country in the world and said, who are you really? We would get every answer in the world about being a doctor and a lawyer and a restaurateur and a teacher and everything else, but we would, very rarely get the type of answer that you have been talking about. So how can we expect that self-education process to be there when the majority of people still don't get it, when they don't know that? How can we teach the parents about that? How do we teach the teachers about that?
Well, that's where as I mentioned, it has to start in kindergarten. It has to start in the beginning. So our educators have to comprehend this missing link. Because once you realize that what you are designed to do, how you are designed, you are uniquely designed, and what you're designed to do is you are a success-making entity. You are here to produce success, not own them. And then you are the enlivening power present within you, and it unifies you with the world because everyone else is the same. So we are looking for equality. We are looking for all that, but we have not given them the solid foundation for equality. That is why we are not practicing equality. So our human society will transform when our coming generation or generation is embedded in this. So
do you think if you took this to college, or if you took this to a teachers association and explained what you just did to me right now and to our audience, that this is really the foundation that students need to learn first and be reminded of constantly, and it's going to propel their propensity to learn to the highest levels, and their desire and their interest in learning is going to greatly increase because they're going to understand this self-education. Do you think you'd get resistance from that? Do you think that these organizations would say, this isn't political, this isn't religious, this is foundational and fundamental, and we should get on board with this?
Well, see, if enough people, decision makers, understand. I did an experiment at my Akron U, where I went to school, and I convinced the president to allow me to teach a course for the freshmen, because freshmen, when they come into college, they have the highest mortality rate, in the sense they leave college and they have difficult time and focusing and all that. So that is the most difficult student body in a college. So I created 4 videos, and they were given for first semester, first video for first couple of weeks, and second video, and then I would answer the questions. And this is what I taught them in a much more elegant way. And the result of that was astounding. Their grade point increased, their mannerism improved, their retention in college was record high. And so this works, Ray, and it's not a theory, because your mind is always insecure. It gives you internal security. It gives you belonging in this world.
Ratanjit, this is fascinating, and I apologize for interrupting you, but I want to bring this really to light and really let our audiences understand it, and me too. So we do need to take our second break here. When we come back, I'm going to let you finish it up. I will be quiet and let you finish up this presentation here and really talk about the other two aspects, the worldly education and the self-alignment, the three components along with self-education that gives us the potential complete education in our world. This is Stress-Free Living. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, Ratanjit, just leave that right on the screen. And we have a minute and a half here. If anybody would like to give a quick comment, then we'll let Ratanjit get back into it.
Go ahead, Dr. Wadia.
Well, I think it will be very interesting to know about self-alignment. And self-education, of course, I think is quite in tune with, what we call the research-based pedagogies in higher education, where we motivate a student to think and to find answers for himself or herself. So in terms of pedagogies and teaching, I think that is what we are talking about. Worldly education, I think, would be about training. Self-alignment, I think, would be more of the heart that we spoke of. I mean, I'm waiting to connect all these.
Yes.
Thank you. So am I. But I have to stop talking so we can do that.
I don't know whether we have enough time.
I know we only have probably 30 seconds here. I don't want to put more commercials in our show because I want to have time for on air. It's a balance. Maybe I'll put in just a little more commercials so we can have a little more time to talk. I think this is our last ad. Jacob, is this the last ad? Yep. Okay. So we're back in just a few seconds here. Sacrifice for us Tuesdays at 8 p.m. on Integrity Radio WINT. This is Stress-Free Living. Ray Samich with you and my co-host Ratanjit and Ray, who is walking us through his ideas of what a complete education looks like. And we already covered self-education. How are we designed? What are we designed to do? And who we really are. Ratanjit, please move on now to the second segment there, the worldly education.
So worldly education, our education system completely misses this part. So how the universe thinks, because we are part of the world. And then what are the intrinsic law of the universe, which are the fundamental laws of the universe, which are not visible? We have material laws, which we're going to talk about. And once that is understood, what this education gives us is embeds us into morality, embeds us into ethics. Otherwise, ethics and morality is guided by just saying, okay, be a good person, be a moral person. It does not get embedded. So how the universe thinks and what are the intrinsic universal laws? So in my research, I found there are 9 universal laws. And once you comprehend those 9 universal laws, automatically everything falls into place. There's a law of purpose, there's a law of integrity, there's a law of acceptance, there's a law of freedom, there's a law of leadership, there's a law of change, there's a law of value, and there's a law of grace. So once you comprehend these laws, and we will do another show to go into detail about these laws, because they are underlaying everything which happens around. They don't change. And many of the religions are based on, or at least talk about these laws in an indirect way, but they don't tell us that these are how the thinking of the universe is, the psychology of the universe is. So the next factor is how the universe works. So that is where most of our education is parked. It tells us the operating law of the universe, means gravity is the operating law of the universe, how the matter, 118 elements which we have discovered thus far, and how these each element works. It's like when you take water and boil it at atmospheric pressure, and it boils at 100 degrees centigrade. And it freezes at below 0 degrees centigrade or 32 degree Fahrenheit, and so on. But if you adulterate that water, if you put salt in it, the freezing point can be changed. That's how we de-ice and so on. So understanding this universe or operating law of the universe, which is through science, technology, and all that, is what we have been able to develop. So all our technology and all that comes from comprehending the operating laws of the universe. But we have completely missed the first portion, how the universe thinks, what are the intrinsic laws of the universe. And the third part of the worldly education is how our society thinks and works. Because what are the social man-made laws? We have to understand, because we are living in this society. But the thing is this, if our first two were thoroughly understood, then our society would make different laws.
Mm-hmm.
We will change these laws differently. And this understanding gives us knowledge of how the human behavior under the current circumstances is, what their culture is, what their language is, all that. So that is also gives us the history and all that aspect of humanity. But that is something which can be changed by comprehending the first two worldly educations. So, and once you comprehend these three things, then you are able to have a full education. So now, all that will not be available to you from day one. It is only comprehending, we have made this receptacle in our mind for how the universe thinks and what are the intrinsic law of the universe. We have made a receptacle in our mind how the operating law of the universe is for technology and science. We have made a receptacle in our mind for society, how the society thinks and works. So we have become suddenly a lifelong student of comprehending these three aspects of the worldly education. Now the last portion is self-alliance. So in the self-alliance, we have to first understand self-care. So in the first education, self-education, we understand that human body is gifted to me. I'm not the human body. So then this gift has to be maintained and taken care of. So if I do not take care of the human body, I will not be able to operate in the right manner. So self-care is a consequence of realigning yourself so that it's just like a computer. Many times, if you have too much thing going on, you have to clean the computer, organize so that it works efficiently. Similarly, to have the body available to us, our capacity of mind and our human body available to us, we have to focus on self-care. And the second part is we have to feed the human, our heart, which is through engaging in music, fine arts. It's not that when you are a scientist and say, well, I'm not a musician, I'm not an artist. It's not a question of creating an art which has commercial value. It is indulging in creating art which allow you a channel to express your inner feelings. You are not blocking your feeling of anger or excitement or those things. They are expressed through fine arts. This gives you an avenue to relax. So it is essential for all of us to understand how fine art is done. So next one is meditation. And meditation is, again, there are, quieting of mind is typically considered as meditation. There are several kinds of meditation. A meditative body means sometimes you have to allow the body to fast. So allow the body to realign itself. And you have to have meditative time for your brain, so you can have a day of complete silence. You do not talk at all. So there are different kinds of medication one has to comprehend and practice. And all these things bring you back to square one. You become completely, all your faculties become completely available to you. And the ultimate meditation is meditation of oneness, because when we learn from our self-education who we really are, we comprehend that the power which brings life in me is who I really am. I live in this human body, and until that power, enlivening power, is present in the human body, this human body cannot be alive. But this power is universally one single power which enlivens all of us. So it unifies us into oneness. It removes mine and his. It completely brings us to a focus of unconditionally adding value. Now, this is complete education. So once you comprehend this complete knowledge, there is a warning that knowledge does not empower you necessarily. Living the knowledge empowers you. So ultimately, just the knowledge of self-education, worldly education, self-alignment is not going to transform you. Because look at the doctors. Do you know that average life cycle of a doctor is less than a normal person? Now, doctor is trained to be healthy, but that stays in the knowledge. It does not translate into habits. So ultimately, until you transmit these things into transformative living habits, this knowledge is not going to transform a human being. It will not bring you from animal stage into a human stage. I think we have running out of time.
Yes, we have, Ratanjit. This has just been magnificent. I have just so enjoyed your walking through this, but it is time to go. In our next program, we're going to start breaking this apart. We're going to especially talk about those laws of the universe and the operating, the intrinsic laws. And this is just so much here. I love every aspect of it. I'm sure our audiences do as well, but we do need to break it down further and really understand it so we can start teaching it and living it and making it a vital part of our lives and our children's lives. Ratanjit, thank you so much for sharing this with us and all of your wisdom and love. We will talk with you again very soon. And thank you to our audience, our Zoom audience, and anywhere that you are listening. We appreciate your being there and hope that we have added value to your life. Remember, we're all playing the same game. We'll talk to you again soon.